The Terek Dominion ships entered the Sol system with the cold efficiency that had marked their conquest of 300 star systems. Their biomechanical vessels, resembling massive obsidian spiders, positioned themselves beyond Mars' orbit. Earth's early warning systems detected them immediately, but there was little celebration of this technical success. Everyone knew what the Terek's arrival meant. Commander Park G1 stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the tactical display with narrowed eyes. At 42, she had spent half her life in Earth's United Space Forces, rising through the ranks during humanity's first tentative steps beyond their home system. The Defender was humanity's newest flagship, but Ji-1 knew it was little more than a toy compared to even the smallest Terek vessel. "They're not attacking immediately," she observed, tucking a strand of graying hair behind her ear. "Standard procedure," replied Captain Kim Do-hyun, her second-in-command. Do-hyun's family had fled the destruction of the Proxima Centauri colony when he was a child. He knew the Terek methods better than most. They always offer surrender first, makes occupation easier. Around them, the bridge crew worked in tense silence, each person aware that they might be witnessing humanity's final hours as a free species. Tactical Officer Song checked and rechecked the meager defensive systems. Communications Specialist Han monitored all frequencies. Navigator Bake plotted potential escape routes that everyone knew would be futile if needed. The communication arrived exactly as predicted. A Terek emissary, skin pale blue and eyes entirely black, appeared on screen. The alien's face had too many angles, as if human features had been rearranged by someone who had only heard them described. When it spoke, its mouth barely moved, yet the words came through clearly. "Humans of Earth, your system is now claimed by the Dominion. Submit and serve, or face extinction." Ji-1 exchanged glances with Do-hyun. There it was, the same ultimatum given to hundreds of worlds before them. No negotiation, no discussion of terms. Submit or die. "We will convey your message to Earth's leadership," Ji-1 replied, keeping her voice steady. "Please stand by for our response." The transmission ended. Ji-1 turned to her communications officer. "Get me the Council. Now." Within an hour, the United Earth Council had convened an emergency session. Representatives from all nations gathered virtually, their faces grim on the massive screen in Earth's Geneva headquarters. Ji-1 observed from the Defender, connected through secure channels. "The Terek's reputation is not exaggerated," Council President Choi began. "Every system that has fought them has been destroyed. Every system that has surrendered exists in slavery." Defense Minister Lee nodded gravely. "Our military cannot match theirs. That is the simple truth." "Then we surrender?" asked the representative from the African Union, voice sharp with disapproval. "We buy time," suggested the European delegate. "We pretend to negotiate while we evacuate as many as possible." "Evacuate to where?" the South American representative scoffed. "There is nowhere in this galaxy the Terek haven't reached or won't reach soon." The debate raged for hours. Ji-1 watched silently, studying each argument, each passionate plea. When President Choi finally called for a vote, she held her breath. All in favor of surrender. Not a single hand was raised. All in favor of resistance. Every hand went up. Unanimous. When the United Earth Council voted to reject the ultimatum, neighboring systems were shocked. The few alien traders still in Earth's orbit immediately prepared to depart. The Volani ambassador, whose species had surrendered to the Terek a century ago, actually wept as he boarded his ship. "You don't understand what you're doing," he told President Choi. "No one refuses the Terek." Ji-1 spent the next 12 hours preparing her ship and crew. The Defender would be at the front line of whatever came next. She studied the few available records of Terek battle tactics, knowing they revealed little. The Terek rarely needed tactics. Their technological superiority usually made resistance brief and futile. As the deadline for Earth's response approached, Ji-1 called her senior officers to the briefing room. Do-hyun was there, along with Chief Engineer Moon, Medical Officer Yang, and Tactical Officer Song. Faces she had worked with for years, friends as much as colleagues. The Council has rejected surrender, she told them simply. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Do-hyun nodded. Good, he said quietly. At least we die on our feet. The Council has also given us new orders, Jae-won continued. The Defender will not engage the Terek directly. We're too valuable to lose in the opening hours. Then what's our mission? Asked Song, leaning forward. Jae-won activated the display table, showing a map of the solar system. We'll withdraw to this position near Saturn. From there, we'll coordinate with Earth's defense grid and the rest of the fleet. Our job is to observe Terek tactics and identify weaknesses. Weaknesses? Moon asked skeptically. The Terek haven't revealed weaknesses in 1,000 years of conquest. No species is perfect, Jae-won replied. They've never faced humans before. Later that day, Jae-won recorded what might be her final message to her family. Her parents in Busan, her brother and his children in New Seoul. She kept it brief, avoiding emotion that might break her composure. I'm proud to serve Earth in this moment, she concluded. Whatever happens, know that I face it without regret. With that done, she returned to the bridge. It was time to deliver Earth's answer to the Terek. The same blue-skinned emissary appeared on screen. Your decision, humans. Jae-won stood straight, her uniform pressed, her expression resolute. The people of Earth reject your ultimatum. We claim the right to determine our own future. We will not surrender. The Terek's black eyes revealed nothing. This is unexpected. Your species shows poor judgment. Perhaps, Jae-won replied. Or perhaps you've never encountered a species like ours before. The emissary's head tilted slightly. It makes no difference. Your resistance will be brief. Your suffering will be significant. The transmission ended abruptly. They think we're insane, Jae-won told her assembled officers later that day, as the Defender moved into its assigned position near Saturn. Perhaps we are, but humanity has never bowed to tyrants, and we won't start now. The officers nodded, determination replacing the fear in their eyes. Beyond the viewports, the rings of Saturn glistened in the distant sunlight. Behind them, Earth waited, small and blue and terribly vulnerable. Before them, the Terek fleet began to move, black shapes against the stars, approaching with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. The first battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. 3 weeks passed since the Terek arrived in Earth's solar system. Instead of immediate attack, they created a blockade. No ships could leave or enter the system. Some people thought the Terek were trying to scare Earth into surrender. Others believed they were studying human defenses before they attacked. In his laboratory beneath Seoul National University, Lee Jin-ho hadn't slept properly in days. The 50-year-old xenobiologist had spent his career studying alien biology from the few samples Earth had gathered through trade and exploration. Now he worked with desperate focus, analyzing the small piece of Terek technology recovered from an abandoned outpost at the edge of the solar system. More coffee, Professor Lee asked his assistant, passing him a steaming cup. Jin-ho nodded gratefully, eyes never leaving his microscope. The sample was part of a Terek control panel, a strange blend of technology and living tissue. The Terek were famous for this approach, creating ships and weapons that were part machine, part biological organism. Look at this, Jin-ho suddenly said, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. He adjusted the microscope settings and motioned for his assistant to look. See how the neural pathways react when exposed to Earth bacteria. On the screen, the tiny filaments of the Terek technology were pulling away from the bacterial sample, almost like a hand recoiling from fire. Jin-ho worked through the night, testing different bacterial strains against the sample. By morning, his bloodshot eyes were bright with hope. He immediately called for an emergency meeting with the Defense Council. 2 hours later, he stood before Earth's leaders, his hands shaking slightly from too much caffeine and too little sleep. Their biomechanical technology has a critical flaw, he announced to the Emergency Defense Council. Their neural networks can't handle certain protein configurations common in Earth bacteria. Are you saying we can make a biological weapon against their ships? Asked Defense Minister Li. Jinho nodded. Their systems literally recoil from these proteins. It disrupts their command pathways. It wouldn't destroy their fleet, but it could temporarily disable their ships. Maybe long enough to give us an advantage. How quickly can you develop a delivery system? Asked President Choi. With proper resources, 2 weeks, Jinho replied. Maybe less if I work with the Brazilian bioengineering teams. While Jinho's team worked on their bacterial weapon, a different kind of mission was underway in space. Major Kang Hee-jin checked her stealth suit one last time before boarding the small craft. At 35, she had spent most of her military career in special operations, but nothing had prepared her for this. She and her team were about to attempt something no one had ever succeeded at before, infiltrating a Terek vessel. Everyone ready? She asked, looking at the 5 soldiers with her. Each had been chosen for specific skills. Yoon for his technical expertise, Ba for his medical knowledge, Park for her strength, Im for his hacking abilities, and Han for his piloting skills. They all nodded. Remember, Hee-jin said, we're not there to fight. We get in, gather what information we can about their systems and tactics, and get out, undetected if possible. Their small craft approached the Terek fleet using a new stealth technology that bent light around their hull. They targeted a scout ship on the outer perimeter, less heavily guarded than the main vessels. The boarding was tense but successful. Using special cutting tools, they created an entry point through the Terek ship's outer membrane, a substance somewhere between metal and skin. Inside, the ship was unlike anything human engineers had designed. Corridors pulsed with what looked like veins carrying fluids. Light came from bioluminescent patches on the walls. The air smelled like ozone and something organic. Moving carefully, avoiding what appeared to be sensor nodes, the team made their way toward what their scan suggested was a central data processing area. These aren't separate systems, Im whispered as he connected his device to a Terek terminal. The whole ship operates as one organism. Suddenly, alarms began to sound, a high-pitched wail that hurt their ears. Terek soldiers approached, tall, blue-skinned figures moving with perfect coordination. We've been detected, Hee-jin said. Do you have enough data? 60% download complete, he replied, eyes on his device. We don't have time for more. We're leaving now. The escape was chaotic. Park used flash grenades to disorient the Terek guards. Han got wounded in the shoulder by some kind of energy weapon. Ba quickly applied a pressure bandage as they ran. They'd barely made it back to their entry point, sealing it behind them as they escaped to their craft. Han, despite his injury, piloted them away at maximum speed. When they returned to Earth, the information they gathered proved invaluable. Hee-jin presented their findings to the Defense Council, with Commander Park Ji-won in attendance via secure link from the Defender. They think in perfect unison. Hee-jin reported, still wearing a bandage on her forehead from the mission. But that makes them predictable. They can't comprehend why different nations and peoples on Earth make different decisions. She showed tactical data they had downloaded. The Terek have never faced a species that isn't unified. Every civilization they've conquered had one government, one military strategy. They evolved as a hive mind species. They literally can't understand how humans can operate with different approaches simultaneously. This discovery changed Earth's entire defense strategy. Instead of trying to unify their approach, Earth's leaders decided to embrace their differences. Russian quantum computers began developing unpredictable defense algorithms. American drone swarms were programmed to use chaotic attack patterns. Chinese manufacturing facilities worked day and night producing specialized weapons based on Jinho's bacterial discovery. Brazilian bioengineers created delivery systems for the bacterial agents. Indian programmers developed communication systems that randomly changed frequencies. African mining operations extracted rare materials needed for the new weapons. European scientists worked on shield technology. Every nation contributed what they did best, creating a defense that followed no single pattern the Terrak could predict. Aboard the Defender, Commander Jai-1 studied these developments with growing hope. For the first time since the Terrak arrived, she allowed herself to believe humanity might have a chance. During a strategy meeting with her officers, she looked at the reports from around the world. So many different approaches, all aimed at the same goal. Diversity, Jai-1 realized, is our greatest weapon. Looking at her own bridge crew, people from different countries, with different skills and ways of thinking, she saw in microcosm what might save humanity. The Terrak, for all their power, had a critical weakness. They couldn't understand or predict a species that didn't think as one. As the Terrak fleet began to move closer to Earth, humanity prepared not a single defense, but hundreds of different ones. The greatest strength humans had ever known, their endless variety of thought and approach, might be exactly what would save them from extinction. The first Terrak assault came at dawn. Their ships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, targeting major cities across every continent simultaneously. It began as a quiet hum that grew into a roar as hundreds of obsidian vessels broke through the clouds. The sun glinted off their dark surfaces as they positioned themselves above New York, Moscow, Beijing, Cairo, Rio de Janeiro, and dozens of other population centers. On screens across Earth, people watched with fear and determination. This was the moment they had prepared for during the 3-week standoff. In the underground command center beneath Geneva, President Choi gripped the edge of the table. "Are all systems ready?" "Yes, Madam President," confirmed Defense Minister Lee. "All defense networks are active." On the main screen, they could see the Terrak mothership holding position just beyond Earth's moon. It was massive, at least 20 kilometers long, shaped like a stretched spider with too many legs. But humanity was ready. As the Terrak ships began powering up their weapons, thousands of microsatellites previously hidden in low orbit activated simultaneously. These tiny devices, barely larger than a dinner plate, had been quietly positioned over the past weeks. Each contained specialized equipment designed to interfere with the specific frequencies the Terrak used for ship-to-ship communication. The effect was immediate. The perfect formation of Terrak vessels faltered slightly. Some stopped their descent momentarily, while others continued, creating gaps in their previously flawless attack pattern. In his laboratory, Li Jinho watched the feed with tense anticipation. "Activate the dispersal units now," he ordered into his headset. Across the globe, specially designed drones rose from hidden locations. They flew directly toward the Terrak landing craft, releasing clouds of Jinho's engineered bacteria. The microscopic organisms were harmless to humans and Earth life, but devastating to Terrak biomechanical systems. Where the bacterial clouds made contact with Terrak ships, strange things began to happen. The vessel's outer membranes trembled and pulsed. Some of their weapons fired randomly. Others suddenly changed direction, bumping into each other. "It's working," Jinho exclaimed, watching the data stream in. "Their neural networks are shutting down exposure pathways, disrupting their control systems." The Terrak, facing unexpected resistance, changed tactics. They landed ground forces in major cities, tall blue-skinned warriors in living armor that pulsed and shifted with their movements. They expected to find panicked civilians. Instead, they found organized resistance. In Seoul, Choi Min-soo emerged from a subway tunnel with his team of fighters. Min-soo, once a construction worker, now led one of the many underground resistance cells that had been preparing since the day the Terrak arrived. "Remember your training," he told his people as they moved through the streets. "Stay mobile. Don't engage directly. Use the disruptors, then move to new positions." His team carried devices developed by Korean and Japanese engineers, handheld units that broadcast the same bacterial proteins Jinho had discovered, but in electromagnetic form. When aimed at Terek soldiers, the devices caused their living armor to seize up, leaving them vulnerable. Similar scenes played out across the world. In New York, resistance fighters used the city's complex underground to appear and disappear around Terek forces. In Moscow, defenders used the city's wide avenues to deploy larger disruptor units. In the Amazon, Brazilian teams used the dense jungle to ambush isolated Terek units. The Terek soldiers, used to enemies who either fled in terror or fought in traditional military formations, couldn't adapt to these guerrilla tactics. Their hive mind approach, which made them so powerful against conventional forces, became a weakness against an enemy that fought in 1,000 different ways at once. In orbit, Commander Park J1 watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Defender. The ship had moved from its position near Saturn to join Earth's defense. Around her, the crew worked with focused intensity, monitoring the conflict from multiple angles. "The ground forces are holding better than expected," reported Captain Kim Do-hyun. "But the Terek are regrouping their ships. They're adapting to the satellite interference." Ji-won nodded. She had expected this. The Terek were powerful because they learned quickly. But humanity had prepared for that too. "All vessels, implement Protocol Hydra," she ordered through the fleet-wide communication system. Earth's Space Defense Force consisted of just 37 combat-capable ships, a tiny number compared to the hundreds in the Terek fleet. But each Earth vessel had been specially modified over the past weeks. Protocol Hydra was named after the mythical creature that grew 2 heads when one was cut off. It was a fitting name for what happened next. Earth's ships broke formation, but not in retreat. Instead, they began executing maneuvers that appeared random to observers. Some accelerated directly toward Terek vessels, only to veer away at the last second. Others powered down completely, drifting like dead ships, only to suddenly reactivate from unexpected angles. Still others released clouds of debris that obscured sensors. There was no pattern to detect because each ship captain had been given authority to act independently, following only basic guidelines rather than specific orders. The Terek fleet, used to enemies who either fled or attacked in predictable military formations, couldn't adapt quickly enough. Their battle computers tried to find patterns where none existed. Their unified command structure, which allowed for perfect coordination against conventional enemies, became sluggish when faced with what appeared to be chaos. "It's working," Ji-won said quietly, watching as the Terek ships began to break their own formations, some pursuing Earth vessels, others holding position, creating gaps in their defense. "Defender to all ships," she commanded. "Phase 2. Target their command nodes." Earth's vessels now focused their attacks on specific points on the larger Terek ships, the communication nodes that linked the biomechanical systems together. Jin-Ho's research had identified these as critical weaknesses. The effect was dramatic. Several Terek ships suddenly lost control, their movements becoming erratic. Others fired weapons at empty space. A few actually began attacking other Terek vessels, apparently unable to distinguish friend from foe. In the Geneva Command Center, a cheer went up as they watched the Terek fleet's perfect coordination dissolve into confusion. "They're retreating," announced Defense Minister Lee, disbelief in his voice. It was true. The Terek ships were pulling back, first from the ground assaults, then from low orbit. Their movements were no longer the smooth, coordinated actions of a unified force, but the jerky retreat of individual vessels trying to escape danger. Aboard the Defender, Ji-won allowed herself a small smile. "All ships, maintain pressure but do not pursue beyond lunar orbit," she ordered. "They're actually leaving," said Do-hyun, amazement in his voice. "For now," Ji-won cautioned, "they'll be back. But they'll have to rethink their entire approach." As the Terek fleet retreated to a position beyond the moon, an unprecedented message was broadcast across Earth. For the first time in a millennium of conquest, the Terek had retreated without conquering their target. Humanity had won the first battle. The war had just begun, but the Invincible Conquerors suddenly looked vulnerable. Word spread quickly through the subjugated worlds. The impossibly powerful Terrak had been repelled. At first, the news traveled in whispers between traders on the edges of Terrak space. Then, as brave messengers carried detailed accounts of the battle, disbelief turned to cautious hope. The Alteri were among the first to react. Their elegant, silver-skinned people had been under Terrak control for over 2 centuries. Once proud explorers with beautiful crystal cities floating in the clouds of their gas giant homeworld, they now labored as engineers in Terrak shipyards. When Alteri leaders heard about Earth's resistance, they secretly reached out through old communication channels that the Terrak had never discovered. Yoon Tae-ho prepared for the most important diplomatic mission of his life. The 60-year-old had spent decades in Earth's diplomatic corps before the Terrak arrived. Now, as Earth's special envoy, he boarded a small, unmarked ship designed to slip past Terrak patrols. "The journey will take 2 weeks," explained the pilot as they departed from a hidden base on Europa. "We'll have to make 7 jumps through uninhabited systems to avoid detection." Tae-ho nodded, studying the files on his tablet. He needed to learn everything about Alteri culture before arrival. Their cooperation could be the key to building a wider resistance. The meeting took place in an abandoned mining facility deep within an asteroid belt in the Alteri system. Tae-ho stood before 5 Alteri representatives, their tall, thin bodies and large eyes regarding him with mixture of hope and doubt. "Your species did what no one has done in 1,000 years," said the Alteri leader, Sen. "But the Terrak will return to your world with greater force. They cannot allow any challenge to their power." "We expect that," Tae-ho replied. "But we don't just want to defend Earth. We want to free the galaxy from Terrak control." The Alteri exchanged glances, their silver skin reflecting the dim lights of the meeting room. "Impossible," said another Alteri. "We tried fighting when they first came. They destroyed half our population." Tae-ho activated a holographic display showing the battle for Earth. "We don't offer just hope," he told them. "We offer a strategy." He explained how Earth's diversity had confused the Terrak's unified thinking, how Jinho's bacterial discovery had disrupted their biomechanical systems, how humanity's different cultures and approaches had created an unpredictable defense. "The Terrak aren't invincible," Tae-ho concluded. "They have weaknesses. They'd just never faced an enemy that could exploit them." By the end of the meeting, the Alteri had agreed to join Earth's resistance. They would begin by secretly adjusting Terrak vessels in their shipyards, building hidden weaknesses into them. Similar meetings happened across Terrak space. Earth sent envoys to a dozen conquered worlds, sharing their techniques and technologies. One by one, occupied worlds began to resist. The Gellians, insect-like beings with 6 limbs and remarkable engineering skills, sabotaged Terrak mining operations. The aquatic Mir, whose transparent bodies allowed them to blend with their ocean environments, blocked crucial supply routes. The crystalline Vosh, who communicated through light patterns, interfered with Terrak communications by creating false signals. Each species found its own way to fight back, using their unique abilities and knowledge of their home systems. The rebellion wasn't coordinated in the traditional sense that would have made it predictable to the Terrak. Instead, it was chaotic, diverse, and constantly changing. On the Terrak throne world, a massive space station orbiting a black hole, the Terrak overlord received reports of these uprisings with growing rage. For the first time in the history of the Dominion, multiple systems were in rebellion simultaneously. "These disturbances all began after our defeat at Earth," observed High Admiral Morveth, his blue skin darker than most Terrak, marked with the ceremonial scars of 1,000 victories. "The humans have infected other species with their defiance. Then we must excise this infection at its source," declared the Overlord. "Gather the Eradicator fleet. You will personally lead the assault on Earth. This time, there will be no retreat. Either they submit, or their planet burns." The Eradicator fleet was the most powerful concentration of Terrak military might. Unlike the standard biomechanical vessels, these ships were designed specifically for planetary destruction. Each carried weapons capable of cracking a world's crust or poisoning its atmosphere. As the Terrak prepared their ultimate response, Earth continued building its alliance. Yum Teho returned with representatives from 7 different species. Others arrived on their own, seeking to join what was becoming known as the Coalition. Commander Park Ji-1, now promoted to Admiral after Earth's first victory, walked into the newly constructed Coalition headquarters beneath the Pacific Ocean. The underwater facility had been built as a precaution against orbital bombardment. Around a large circular table sat representatives from 27 different species. Some breathed Earth's air comfortably, others wore environmental suits. A few existed as holographic projections, their physical forms unable to survive in Earth conditions. The sight was unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Under Terrak rule, different species were kept isolated from each other, prevented from sharing knowledge or forming alliances. Our deep space monitoring network has detected movement, Ji-1 announced without preamble. The Terrak are gathering a massive fleet at the edge of our system. She activated the central display, showing hundreds of ships moving toward Earth. At the center was a vessel that dwarfed even the Terrak mothership they had faced before, a planet killer that could end all life on Earth. They're coming in full force, Ji-1 informed the newly formed Coalition Council. This is what we've prepared for. A murmur went through the assembled representatives. Many had witnessed Terrak eradication campaigns before. None had survived. The Eradicator fleet has never failed, said Sen of the Altari, voicing what many were thinking. They've never faced anything like us before, replied Ji-1. Not just humans, all of us together. She turned to face each representative. Every species here has unique knowledge of Terrak operations. You've all lived under their rule, studied their weaknesses. Apart, none of us could stand against them. Together, we have a chance. Over the next hours, they formed a unified defense plan that embraced their differences. The Altari would provide technical knowledge of Terrak ship vulnerabilities. The Gellians would deploy their specialized mining explosives against Terrak hulls. The Mir would use their aquatic abilities to protect Earth's oceans. The Vosh would create a galaxy-wide communication network immune to Terrak interference. Humans would coordinate it all, providing the unpredictable tactical thinking that had confused the Terrak in the first battle. As the representatives departed to prepare their forces, Admiral Ji-1 stood alone at the window, looking out at the dark Pacific waters. The next battle would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of all species in the galaxy. The Terrak were coming to erase humanity from existence. Instead, they would find a united galaxy ready to end their reign of terror. The final battle for Earth's orbit began at midnight Greenwich time. The Terrak Eradicator fleet emerged from hyperspace as a single massive formation, their ships arranged in a perfect sphere around their flagship. The planet killer at the center of their formation was larger than anything humans had ever seen, a construct that looked like a massive dark star with jagged spines extending in all directions. All coalition forces, battle positions, Admiral Park Ji-1 commanded from the bridge of the Defender. The ship had been upgraded with technology from a dozen different worlds, making it nearly unrecognizable from the vessel that had faced the first Terrak assault. Earth's defenses no longer stood alone. Ships from 42 formerly conquered worlds had arrived over the past week, each bringing unique tactics and technologies to the fight. The Altari contributed their crystal-focused energy weapons. The Gellians brought ships that could split into smaller attack craft. The Mir deployed living vessels that could camouflage themselves against the backdrop of space. Terrak command ship is broadcasting, reported Communications Officer Han. The face of High Admiral Morveth appeared on screen. His blue skin was darker than other Terrak, almost purple, and ceremonial scars covered his face. Humans and traitor species, he began, his voice cold and precise. Your rebellion ends today. Earth will be reduced to ash as a lesson to all who defy the Dominion. Surrender now, and other worlds may be spared. Ji-1 stood from her command chair. We reject your offer, Admiral Morveth. The Dominion's time has ended. Today marks the beginning of a new galaxy, one where all species determine their own futures. Morvath's black eyes narrowed. Then you have chosen extinction. The Terek fleet began its advance. Unlike the previous attack, they moved with caution, clearly wary of Earth's defenses after their first defeat. "They're scanning for our microsatellites," observed Captain Kim Do-hyun. "They've learned from last time." "As expected," Jae-won replied. "Initiate first phase." The coalition had anticipated this. Instead of relying on the same tactics, they had prepared new surprises. Holographic decoys activated, creating the appearance of thousands of Earth vessels where none existed. Meanwhile, the actual coalition ships used Vosh light-bending technology to mask their true positions. The Terek responded by launching their first devastating weapon, a massive energy pulse designed to disable electronic systems. It swept through space toward Earth, a wave of purple energy that distorted the stars behind it. "Shields holding," reported Tactical Officer Song. "The Gellian crystal matrices are absorbing the energy." The battle quickly escalated. Terek bioships deployed swarms of smaller attack craft. Coalition forces countered with their own diverse responses. Mere ships dove through the Terek formations at impossible speeds, their pilots accustomed to navigating ocean currents. Alteri vessels fired precisely targeted beams that severed the neural connections in Terek ships. Human vessels implemented Protocol Hydra again, but with new variations that the Terek couldn't predict even after studying the previous battle. Aboard the Terek flagship, High Admiral Morvath grew increasingly frustrated. His forces had the advantage in numbers and firepower, yet they couldn't establish tactical superiority. Every time they adapted to one coalition tactic, 3 new approaches would emerge. "Deploy the Mindbinders," he ordered. This was the Terek's most feared weapon, a psychic attack that could overwhelm the consciousness of enemy pilots, turning them against their allies. The technology had broken the resistance of many species in the past. Massive emitters extended from the spines of the Terek flagship, pulsing with ominous energy. As the psychic wave began to spread, several coalition ships suddenly veered off course, their pilots struggling against the mental assault. In a research station on Earth's moon, Dr. Ba Sun-ki monitored the battle with intense focus. The neurologist had spent months studying Terek psychic technology, with help from species who had experienced it before. Working with scientists from 17 worlds, she had developed a potential countermeasure. "They've deployed the Mindbinders," came the alert from Earth Command. "Activating countermeasures now," Sun-ki responded, her fingers flying over the control panel. Across the Earth-Moon system, a network of quantum resonators activated simultaneously. These devices, based on Vosh crystalline technology and powered by human quantum computing, generated a field that disrupted the coherence of the Terek psychic attack. The effect was immediate. The Mindbinder wave collapsed, the energy dissipating harmlessly. But the resonators did more than just protect coalition forces. They sent feedback through the Terek network, temporarily disrupting the hive-mind connection that unified their forces. On the Defender's Bridge, Jae-won saw her opportunity. "All ships, execute Operation Dawn." This was the coalition's masterstroke. Not a single tactic, but a simultaneous implementation of 42 different attack patterns, one from each species, all coordinated, but none following the same approach. Some ships attacked directly. Others targeted specific vulnerabilities. Some appeared to retreat only to circle back from unexpected angles. The Terek fleet, already struggling with the disruption of their hive mind, couldn't respond effectively to the multifaceted assault. Their perfect formation began to break apart as individual commanders made different decisions without central coordination. Jae-won directed the Defender toward the Terek flagship, accompanied by ships from 7 different worlds. "Target their command center," she ordered. "All weapons, maximum power." The combined assault pierced the flagship's defenses. Explosions bloomed across its surface as critical systems failed. Across the Terek fleet, something unprecedented began to happen. Without the unifying influence of their hive mind, Individual Terek captains began making independent decisions. Some continued fighting. Others retreated. A few actually turned their weapons on other Terek ships, ancient rivalries suddenly emerging without the control of the hierarchy. The Terek Dominion, faced with unprecedented defeat, fractured from within. Centuries of absolute control collapsed in days. As news of the battle spread across Terek space, subject worlds rose up against their weakened overlords. The carefully maintained control structure of the Dominion unraveled with shocking speed. 6 months later, representatives from over 100 worlds gathered in New Geneva to sign the Galactic Cooperative Charter. The massive assembly hall had been specially constructed to accommodate beings from vastly different environments. Some needed water tanks, others specialized atmospheric chambers, but all were present as equals. Admiral Park Ji-won, now wearing the formal uniform of the newly formed Coalition Defense Force, stood on the podium with representatives from the core worlds that had led the resistance. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning, she told the assembled delegates. For too long, the galaxy lived under the shadow of dominion. Now we step into the light of cooperation. The charter they signed that day established the fundamental principle that would guide the new galactic community: unity through diversity. Each world would maintain its independence while participating in a cooperative structure for mutual benefit and defense. After the ceremony, Jae-won found a quiet moment on a balcony overlooking the lake. Captain Kim Do-hyun, now her second-in-command in the coalition forces, joined her there. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when the Terek first appeared in our system?" he asked. Jae-won shook her head, looking out at the peaceful water reflecting the lights of the city. "I hoped we might save Earth. I never dreamed we would help free the galaxy." The Terek believed uniformity was strength, she reflected to Do-hyun. They never understood that our differences, our adaptability, make us stronger. Do-hyun nodded. Humans had been fighting among ourselves for so long. Perhaps we needed an outside threat to help us see what actually matters. In the months and years that followed, the galaxy underwent a remarkable transformation. Throughout its vast expanse, former Terek subjects began rebuilding their civilizations, not in the image of their conquerors, but in celebration of their own unique qualities. Trade flourished between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. Cultural exchanges led to new art forms and scientific breakthroughs. Species that had been enemies under Terek rule discovered they had more in common than they had differences. Earth took its place not as the ruler of this new coalition, but as its catalyst, the world that had shown that diversity could be a source of strength rather than weakness. Humanity hadn't just defended Earth, they had shown the galaxy a new way forward. The end